Welcome to episode 116 of the omnigamersclub podcast, the podcast for games on all platforms, including Silk posting. I am Daniel Winter.
And I'm Mark USA. How's it going, Daniel?
Hello, Mark. Going well here. It's been a proper weekend, sandwiched between school for the first time in a while, so appreciating the weekend a lot more now, shall we say.
Yeah, we survived the first week of school.
Yes.
My family too. Got a new high schooler in my family, so that was exciting. And back to the fall schedule makes the weekend all the sweeter. So.
Yeah, it's been a tricky week and just in adjusting to new schedules. So I actually don't have a lot to talk about this week. I'm sure we'll find something, but it was a bit tricky to pick what to talk about because it's in between a lot of different games right now, shall we say?
Yeah, that's okay. We do the dessert section where we go off topic. We got some news or general topics of interest. I might do a little bit of a different appetizer section as well. So I think it's all right. We have our 3-course meal, but we're flexible within those courses.
Absolutely. Well, why don't you kick us off with the first course?
Sure. Well, I'm going to start us off with a really quick amuse-bouche. I know that you and I met up last week to essentially have lunch together, but basically we're like passing like ships in the night because you went to the Vancouver Public Library annual book sale. As did I. You went first, we met up for lunch, and then I carried on and went to the sale thereafter. So
I didn't actually hear if you managed to find anything at the sale.
Oh, I did manage to find some stuff, but why don't you tell me about your experience from slightly earlier in the morning?
Yeah, I got there first thing right before it opened, basically. There was a huge line around the block. I was just at the tail end of the first wave that got into the room, basically, so I didn't have to wait outside. Obviously, there's just a huge wall of people. I imagine a lot of people are going in there as resellers to, like, get some good finds, then, stick up on eBay or in their secondhand bookstore or wherever, but I always jump in there just to see what good finds I can have, because there's often a lot of new books and DVDs and all kinds of finds. There was some Xbox 360 games in the mix there, but yeah, I got a pretty good haul. I found some fresh Dan Da Dan manga, the first few volumes of that for like $1 each. I got some John Scalzi sci-fi trilogy that I've been looking for, and a few other things I don't recall offhand, but quite a bit.
Very nice. Yeah, you and I went to it was at Omnigamersclub Udon for lunch, for a quick noodle bite, and then I went to the library thereafter. So not long after you, on the same day, and I found a range of things. I didn't want to carry too much because I was just walking. But I lucked out. I found the entire 25-volume run of Great Teacher Onizuka in Japanese.
Oh.
25 volumes. So they were $2
wow.
each. So I got $50 and I got 25 volumes of a manga that I'd been intending to read, and in Japanese. It's mostly just Japanese reading practice, but I was very, very happy about that. I did see some other manga titles in the English section as well, but it's kind of hard to start like in the middle of a volume. So if they're missing the early volumes, probably someone like you came up and then snatched up all the early volumes, and then it was just like the middle titles of some of the other ones. There was Moriarty the Patriot, which is a really good series that's also available on the Jump app as well. So I could just read it there, but I do recommend that title to anyone else. And I didn't see too much in terms of video games. I think that was pretty much all picked over.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, the novels are kind of like scattershot. So unless you got a lot of time on your hands, it's a little hard to dig through piles and piles and piles. And I will give you a note that I actually went to the library sale again 2 days later because my family was downtown nearby there for just hanging out on the weekend. And it was a line out just right into the atrium. By the time we arrived, we left, we went for lunch, came back, and then the lineup was out the door around the block. So, yeah, I think
It's
still
adding
a
new
lot
stuff
of
over
interest.
the course of the weekend, basically, and there's constantly new books being added to the pile. Yeah.
But interestingly enough, basically the graphic novel section was obliterated.
I bet.
All the novels just kind of colonized the graphic novel section and took it over because probably the graphic novels are popular enough to just
That seems to be where the big crowd was when I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a first volume of I think Brian K. Vaughan's Saga, and I got a couple of volumes of Monstrous, which is a comic I'm interested in starting reading.
I actually also I did pick up the first volume of the Die comic, the connected to the RPG that I talked about recently, which I just happened to borrow from the library and was returning that same day, so I picked up my own copy of that.
Irony. That's really cool, though. Okay, I'm going to continue into my real appetizer talk. So I have been. I think people are aware that I have been buying these retro handhelds. I started off with the RG35XX which I believe you have as well. It's basically this cute clamshell kind of Game Boy Advance SP inspired console. And as you see here, I have both the original and the replica. So they're pretty faithful recreations. This one is a little bit larger, actually, if you hold them side by side. So, you will definitely get the nostalgic feels if you buy these sorts of things. And I think they are kind of aimed at, olds like me and even yourself, because I think GBA was in your generation as well. It's aimed squarely at people like that because these pieces of hardware are cute. They're unitaskers essentially, but they're powered by, lithium-ion batteries and basically cheap microcomputers and like Linux-based software. So they're actually pretty capable. You can install like multiple different OSs on different hardware, and that gives them a totally new experience. Imagine like you bought a Game Boy Advance SP and you could choose one of 5 different operating systems to run.
Yeah,
Of
they're
course,
definitely targeting the nostalgia there with that form factor for sure.
yeah, and of course Nintendo wouldn't let you, kind of rewrite the operating system yourself, but you can do this. And with these game hardware, you're not limited to one platform. You don't have to play just Nintendo games or just Game Boy Advance games. You can play from entire spans of hardware platforms. So I sort of bought one, and then I never stopped buying these pieces of hardware. So I just wanted to give a kind of quick overview of kind of my impressions. I'm not one of the dedicated retro handheld reviewers there are many of online and lots, especially on YouTube. So if you're very interested, then I recommend you go check out YouTube for Tech Dweeb's channel. And then there's, I think it's retro, what is it called? Uh, I'll remember it in a second, or at least very share the URL for that. So I wanted to break it down that there's a couple of genres for these sorts of things. There's the clamshell kind that I showed you just there with the XXSP. There's this sort of model. This is called what is it called? An XF40H. This is a 4-inch 1x1 screen. So it's a little hard to tell because it's running about 3-4 game right there. But essentially, this is great, like fantastic for 1x1 games, like Game Boy, for instance. Game Boy is famously a square screen. And not only that, so it's perfect because it blows it up to like 100% of the size. And it is even good for games that are tate mode. So vertical ones. You remember some arcade titles with the, vertically oriented screens. 1942, for instance, some of those shooters, a lot of them are vertically oriented.
I was going
One
to
by
say that
one.
those dual joysticks probably aren't much use for the old school 1-1 games, but for emulating
Yeah.
arcade games, those joysticks are probably quite useful.
Yeah, that's true. And they're useful, like 2 of them you don't really need, but one of them is great for something like N64
True.
because it's hard to control, Mario 64 with the digital
Yes.
stick.
Yeah.
So there's that kind as well. And then there's probably the most popular is the sort of just straight up Game Boy DMG sort of style, just like the vertical oriented screen, vertical oriented device with the 3x4 or 3x2 screen at the top, D-pad, 4 face buttons, simple arrangement, and this one's really cute. It even has a little divot like where a cartridge would
Oh,
go.
cute.
This one is the Trim UI Brick, which is actually a really, really slick device. It has one of the highest resolution screens. I think most of them are like 480 by 320 or something like that. But this one is something like 720 by 1200 or some much denser screen resolution. And what that lets you do is that is actually overkill for a lot of these older devices because some of these devices are outputting like postage stamp size resolutions if you really think about it in modern terms. But what the larger high definition screens let you do is they let you multiply the dimensions of a range of devices so that they're closer to a integer scale, what's called. So it's like an exact multiple of the dimensions. So instead of being 480 by 320, it's like 1200 by 720 or something like that. You can do an exact 5 times multiplication of the resolution instead of like 4.5 times, because it's the 0.5 that makes the screen fuzzy, and if you want it really sharp, you want an integer scale.
I know it can be a pretty exact science in trying to emulate the look of these older games, not just the graphics themselves, but how they looked and felt on those old CRT monitors. And like the upscaling doesn't always scale particularly well. I don't have the eye to really pull that apart and get exact about that, to be honest. I consider it quite a sacred to try and emulate one for one. But
Yeah, I tend to agree. A lot of people add these things called CRT filters, or basically just filters over top of a screen, because CRT TVs were different technology. They had like these scan lines, and then they had these alternating light and dark patterns, and that created kind of like smoothing and blending effects that digital screens actually aren't really good at replicating. So they create these kind of virtual filters to make screens fuzzy, to emulate even how it would look on a screen. Some filters even have like a little bubble, so that the edges are more rounded.
The fisheye lens.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
tube TVs were literally bulbous. So really cool different attempts that people are making. And I think the through line with all of these devices is choice. People want choice of the game that they want to play, the platforms they want to play from. They want a lot of choice in the ROMs that they can choose to play from. And they have additional choice in the filters that they can apply to make the screen look, actually pixel perfect or fuzzy like the old school experience is, or even changing the two-tone color palette on the black and white Game Boy, because of course we all know it wasn't actually black and white. It was that swamp green. But in this case, you can make it more like a virtual boy red if you really wanted it that way. And another last kind of, I wouldn't say the last, but another popular format is this widescreen, like PS Vita style. And, this device is the Retroid Pocket 5. Of course, it's the latest in a line of Retroid Pocket devices. I actually, funny enough, bought a Retroid Pocket 1 way back in the day. And that was just like a kind of dead on arrival, really flaming turd. Just a terrible, terrible experience that I kind of forgot about retro hardware for about 5 years. And then I just jumped back in it. These ones are, of course, great at replicating, the sort of PS Vita experience, holding up an original PS Vita 1000 in comparison. Of course, this RP5 is great for tackling slightly more powerful games like PSP, PS Vita, even some late Nintendo Switch games. Of course, me and my family, we have a policy. We only play games that we actually own. But this is a great way that it's probably hard to tell on the video screen, but the RP5 has OLED screen. I don't have a Nintendo Switch OLED, so this allows me to play some of those games with, the crisp colors. And of course, this lets me play some PSP and Vita games at like 4 times, 5 times resolution. So it's a crisp experience that you just wouldn't get in those old devices.
Excellent. Yeah, I've not really played much of my Ambernic since I played through Phantasy Star. Partly because I've just been playing a bunch of Nintendo Online and finding that a pretty satisfying experience. I've started to get the hang of that now. Even that has added some of the CRT filters and sort of more options for the graphical display. I did find the Emblem at least do not be particularly intuitive in its interface. I know you can tweak that. I just don't have the know-how. So I might look into some of the the Android devices, like the Retroid, just for something that's a little more pick
Yeah.
up and play and accessible out of the box.
That's a good point. That RP5, the Retroid Pocket 5, is an Android-based OS. So if you have an Android phone, or even if you have an iPhone, a lot of the concepts carry over. There's an app store, there's icon bubbles. And in that sense, those Android-based devices are a little bit less special feeling to some. And some would argue, why get that? You just plop your beautiful high resolution device that you already have in your pocket in one of those extending controllers, Bluetooth controllers, like the I think there's one called the Backbone. GameSir makes some. There's like a whole cottage industry of these extendable controllers that sort of sandwich your phone device in between really like legit high-end and controller hardware.
I mean, we've talked a little bit about this in regards to Final Fantasy Tactics and how there is a lot of distractions and reasons not to be using your phone as a
Right.
proper gaming device, and having a dedicated device that isn't going to have other pop-ups and phone calls and things coming through is preferable broadly.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty much fall in that camp. I also like I lived in that generation where portables, like pre Nintendo Switch, where portables were actually their own unique type of device. They had their own unique type of games that went to them. We were having that discussion about how back in the day when you had dedicated portables, it bred a design, a game design that was just a different spirit than the home console games. And games like, Legend of Zelda, The Minish Cap, or Spirit of Ages, Oracle of Ages, whichever that duo pair was called. These kind of more bite-sized
So like
games.
indie games before we had indie games.
Yeah, and a lot of them were from really, promising new teams within established developers like Nintendo or Capcom. So, these portables really have a historical place, a legacy of sort of birthing a lot of more innovative, um, experimental titles that you didn't get to play on home consoles really until like the PlayStation 1 came around. Just because the game software was so cheap to produce at that point on just plastic discs that you could get experiments like Vib Ribbon and Parappa the Rapper and things like that. So I really love these handhelds. And what I'm coming around to lately is that I've decided that I'm actually going to stop buying them because I feel really good about where I am right now. The latest acquisition I have right here is another clamshell. This one's called the Miu Flip V2, and I really like this model. The Miu hardware, actually, the Miu consoles have great software options, and the Onion OS on the Miu Mini and the Miu Mini Plus are really top of the game, essentially. Like, so easy to use, but they have a lot of convenient additional features, like this game swapper feature, where it just basically instantly lets you resume any game exactly at the moment where you were. And it has this visual kind of like blades like system, like the original 360 OS, where you can kind of swipe between just the instance of where you were in a game. And it's very immediate, very kind of spontaneous. And I feel like I need something like that, or it really helps encourage spontaneous gameplay sessions, because these little portables, they're meant to be convenient, pick up and play, and of course set it down and pick up and play again, which is of course very different from a home console experience. So I think they're great, but nowadays I'm finding with systems like the Retroid Pocket 5 that although they're really powerful, they have their limits. Like, this won't play every PS Vita game. Some are just purely incompatible. It's kind of like the Steam Deck, can't play every PC game. A ton of them it plays are great, but if I can't play every PS Vita game on a piece of hardware, then this isn't a PS Vita replacement, is it? So I might as well play on that original hardware, which I am fortunate enough to already own. But I know that nowadays some people are actually neophytes to those systems, but they're buying them secondhand, like now in 2025. They just heard that they're really usable systems. They can be modded very easily, and they can, play a lot of the old games. So PS Vita 1000, in my opinion, fantastic for Vita and PSP. I don't really play that many one by one Square games or Tata games, so I don't really need a Square screen device. I think this style device, be it the RG35XX or the Miu Flip, this is fantastic, and I have it perfectly set up for basically every system that I love from the 8-bit to the 16-bit era. So like that's the heart and soul of my retro game library. So that will cover it. So really between this, the PS Vita, and the modded 3DS XL that I have, like that covers my 3DS and DS side of things as well. So
Feasting with options there.
I kind of have the bases covered. I don't need the fancy new hardware to do that because these will play them one to one, speed and resolution and color gamut. So I'm pretty happy where I am right now. But for anyone else, if you haven't dived into this market yet, you have a lot of options. You can get the retro hardware and get one of these devices. They'll cover a lot of the systems, or you could just use a tablet or a phone, attach an external controller to it, or get one of the very portable PCs, of which there are many of nowadays, the Steam Deck or the Legion Go. Yeah, there's lots of those. So you got a lot of choices. And if anyone has any direct questions about that, feel free to send them my way and I can give you more details.
I really do need to dig up my old Vita and see if I can get that working again.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I unlike yourself, I like a lot of the fun is tinkering with these devices. Like, just can I get it to work? And that's where I get a lot of joy. Just recently today, in fact, I dug up this old Android-based e-ink reader for my wife. She was complaining that she wanted to read Kindle and Libby ebooks, and I'm like, I can do that. And she didn't like the original OS for it, so I kind of rooted it and basically removed all the bloatware, and it runs like 5 times faster now. So I just kind of like tinkering, and that's part of the fun too with these devices.
Yeah, hard to get by anything without bloat these days, unfortunately.
It's true.
They get back to the
But
basics.
yeah, but if you like to tinker, you got a lot of devices to do that with.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay, I'll try and keep this short since we're running a little long already. But I just wanted to quickly talk about, well, Silksong is out now finally, and of course the internet is being completely normal about it. I was interested in a couple of articles that I saw this last week, using Silksong more of a launching board in regards to Team Cherry basically not providing review codes in advance of the game. I'm not sure if they provided them after the game's launch, perhaps, but as far as I know, they just like we're hands off. Like, no, we're not going to bother with that. There was one article called "Silksong Hastens the Death of the Critic" by Grace Benfell, which was talking about in regards to like how not having those review copies basically gives power to all of the content mill websites. Basically they're going to power through and get those reviews out as soon as possible anyway, and all of the other more thoughtful critics aren't going to, like, it's going to take them a lot longer to catch up basically and get any more thoughtful criticism out there. There was a follow-up response called "Games Criticism is Dead, Long Live Games Criticism" by Kaile Hultner, that basically was challenging that, not in an aggressive way, but just saying that, look, games criticism, if we're trying to be something different, we're going to have to differentiate ourselves from those more commercial marketing enterprises, and it's best if we can divorce ourselves from the publishers completely, because even if you get review codes, you're often controlled by embargoes and other conditions, and that separating yourself from that entirely is admirable, and there's value in that basically, and there's value in letting these conversations wait a little while, wait until the game's been out a couple of weeks, and you've had let those thoughts stew and percolate, and then you can have more interesting conversations rather than rushing content out the door day one. And obviously, the internet is very much rewarding rushed takes, shall we say. I am playing Silksong. I will be taking my time before I review that. But it just got me thinking about the state of games criticism. There was an interesting conversation yesterday on Bluesky talking about how there's not really any games out this year that people would consider sort of unqualified recommendations. It's like, but what does that even mean for something to be an unqualified recommendation? Or you must buy this game. It's like for a game to be accessible for everyone, we have to do so in such a facile way. Like, a game for everyone is a game for no one. I've really been thinking about games in terms of buyer's guides and trying to get away from that, really. It's like, we're not here just to be a marketing extension of the publishers. Obviously, it's always going to be a bit of a side effect in advocating for games and products that we like, but I don't know, we want to be having more of a thoughtful conversation about these things and separating ourselves from just doing the job of the publishers and advocating for them.
Yeah, I mean, like, to our credit, that's why we never cover the latest hotness, right?
Not always.
Sometimes we've done that when we were on Game Pass or whatever. Obviously, we're not on that anymore, but today we're covering some years old games, some retro hardware we've discussed already. So we try not to get caught up in the hype machine. But is that really a reflection on games criticism, or is that really a criticism, an argument against the medium by which it's conveyed? Isn't the internet entirely about hype, hot takes, and being in the moment? Being first to put your word out there, whether there's any thought behind it or not, that
Gaming,
gets you the
SEO,
clout.
algorithms, and yeah.
Yeah,
It's also starting to feel like the World of Warcraft first, like when the new raid comes up and all the guilds racing to be first. Basically, it's like, I don't know. It's just saying that you're first, trying to get the most eyes, or so you can get some eyes on the ads rather than having interesting things to say. I mean, that's what the internet is encouraging and rewarding across the board right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't really keep up with that sort of stuff anyways. Like, I can't be bothered to watch news the moment it comes out, so it doesn't really sway me that much, but I know that it exists. Hype cycles are hard to avoid. I am considering buying a new game. I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to hype it, but I'm not immune to these effects either once in a while. But one of the core tenets of this channel, I hope, viewers and listeners feel it too, is that there's a lot of merit in old games. Old games aren't invalid because they're a couple of years old. They still have just as much value. Their creativity and new angles, fresh takes to kind of to show us months after they come out. So I think it's worthy to revisit things, and also revisit things a second time around. Maybe you haven't played in a while. How do you feel about playing it again? Doesn't make an opinion more valid because it's fresh.
Yes, I'll be covering something very much like that in our main segment. But all that is to say, I think that there is interesting conversations and criticism happening out there if you're willing to look beyond what the internet is serving you. A couple of new websites have basically started up, which is quite heartening. The first quickly is Endless Mode. This is an offshoot of Paste, which was traditionally sort of music and film. But this is games, video games, board games, tabletop games, also some anime for some reason. But the aforementioned article by Grace Benfell was on that website. And they're posting some really interesting stuff, including some reviews of pretty niche indie RPGs. Like, there was one from Cameron Kunzelman, who I follow quite closely, but he was reviewing Exclusion Zone Botanist, which is one I've talked about here previously. Secondly, there's a new website called Rogue.site, which is quite explicitly inspired by, shall we say, Rascal News, who we talk about a lot. The folks at Rascal have provided some support, just getting this off the ground. And this is a bunch of ex-Polygon staff who have basically started another new video game coverage site. So I've not seen much of that yet. I've not had a chance to listen to their podcast, but I'm excited to see what they come up with.
I have another podcast recommendation to throw upon the pile now that you mention it. I've been listening to a new podcast called Post Games by, I think his name is Chris Plant, who's a member of the Besties podcast, of course, and former, I guess, still games journalist. He might have worked at Polygon too at some point. I can't follow who these things are. But Post Games is interesting in that it doesn't follow the media trend of the latest hotness either. It covers kind of like off the beaten path topics, general topics that apply to corners of the video game industry, actually a little bit like people make games, now that I think about it. Well, it's a one-person operation led by host Chris Plant and researched by him too, I imagine. But it has a lot of interviews, it has a lot of discussion, sometimes multiple interviewees each episode, but it's talking about one specific topic. So one of the earlier ones was about NSFW games. So, of course, that's very, very timely in light of the Stripe and Steam in itch takedowns of a lot of H game content. And one of them was recently about the Street Fighter movie, for instance. So covers a range of things, game tangentially or directly game related.
Games as culture rather than games as product, basically.
Right, yeah. So if you're tired of the mainstream video game coverage, the hype cycle, the hype machine, then this is kind of like the opposite of that. It's quite thoughtful. I usually don't enjoy single person podcasts because I kind of find them a bit dry and pretentious. This one avoids most of that. There's a little bit of that to be had too. But it's well researched and the topics are just fascinating. So recommended.
Excellent. Well, lots to think about today. So, with all that said, shall we talk about some games?
Let's talk about some games. I'm going to talk about a short one, or at least a small one. As hinted in previous week's episodes, I picked up some small box games from Japan. Here's another one. This one's called Nana. It has a different name in North America. It's known as Trio. And it has different artwork, but this one is called Nana, which means 7 in Japanese. And it's by Kaya Miyano, designer, and art by Sai Beppu. The art is absolutely delightful. So I was very pleased to get this in Japan. And actually, I believe there are multiple different editions.
A Christmas version, I think I saw.
Yeah, a Christmas edition, and then I think there's at least a third edition as well. But the art is delightful in this, and this is truly one of those games where like the theme doesn't really matter, but the art really makes a difference. And as you can see here on the video, just the 7 cards have this nice gold leaf effect on it. So
The art does really pop, even if it is irrelevant.
Certainly, and it's just delightful. And you should be pleased if you go to Japan that when you pick this up, it includes English language rules right in the box, as well as Japanese, of course. So, what is Nana? Nana is a simple card game. It's sort of like a combination between memory. It has memory elements, and then what's that other set collection? It's a set collection game essentially. So you want to create sets of cards, like I guess Rummy.
Go Fish.
Go Fish, sure. So essentially, how the game goes is that it's for 3 to 6 players is the recommended number, and if you have a higher number of players, just remove some of the suits, the numbers of cards, and the cards are, I believe, 3 copies of each number between 1 and 12. And the primary goal is you win the game if you create a set of 7s, 3 7s. If you have all 3 7s, you win the game right away. Or if you collect 3 unrelated sets of 3 cards, so 3 ones, 3 threes, and 3 sixes, for instance, then you win the game. Or if you have sets that add up to, or interestingly enough, subtract down to 7. So for instance, if you have 3 12s and I think 3 5s, then 12 minus 5 is 7. So it adds up to 7. So interestingly enough, how do you do that? Well, you hold cards in your hand, kind of like Bonanza. You have to sort them in order. So you're going to have the lowest number on your left-hand side and the highest number, presumably, on your right-hand side. And interestingly enough, you have to use some deduction, but you have to do it in a very limited way. You can ask any player on their turn, including yourself, show me your lowest value card or your highest value card. If you have your highest value card is a 7, you would have, and you have 2 of them, you don't only have to show 1 7, so you don't have to give the whole ball game away. But if your lowest value card is a 2 and your next highest is a 7, well, then you just have to show the 2. So when a player asks you, that's all they can ask you. And basically, for instance, I could ask you, Daniel, what's your lowest card in your hand? And you show me a 1. And I also have a 1 in my hand. And so I say, hey, Mark, what's your lowest card in your hand? And I put down the 1. Now I have 2 1s. I win a set if I can show the third one. Now, where's the third one? It could be in one of multiple places. It could be in another player's hand, even Daniel's. Or it could be down in the middle of the table. And depending on the number of players, there's a number of cards that are arranged in a grid face down. And this is where some of the memory comes in. You can't ask the table, show me your lowest card or your highest card, but you can just flip any of these cards and just remember what it is. But the other players are also looking. And the other players are also listening. They are challenging themselves to remember what cards have been flipped up, which are the lowest numbers that have been asked around the table, which are the highest numbers that have been asked around the table. And basically you use all of these techniques, and I've taught you how to play the game. You use these around the table to deduce, who has what sets, and to reveal them in front of your locale, because if you create a set, you can take a card from another player. And then you continue on around the table. And kind of the fun comes out when there's obviously players that have not paying attention, or you've been able to distract them intentionally, or they thought it was this number, they were sure of this number, but it's the wrong number. So there's a lot of interaction that goes around the table.
I definitely missed a reveal when I was like checking the rules or something, I think, and it was down a little bit of information compared to everyone else.
Yeah, you got to really be eagle-eyed and sharp around the table. And this game is simple enough that you could definitely play it with a range of ages, similar to the game we covered last week, Harvest. Great for a different range of ages. And I noticed that among core gamers, a lot of core gamers seem sort of like resistant to the concept of memory, because memory is not often featured in a lot of core games for hardcore gamers. It's often the realm of children's games, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've played several memory games with my daughter, but it's tricky in that it can feel like a bit of a discrepancy in everyone's capabilities. Some people are just better at memorizing things, whether that's natural or just or practiced is up for debate. But like it can feel like, I just don't have a very good memory. I can't visualize where these cards are laid out, and it's pretty, like, you see people make some pretty simple mistakes very quickly, like asking the same question 2 rounds in a row, basically.
Yeah, but that's where some of the humor comes in, and that's also, people have different skills. You're right. Some people are better at memory. Some people are better at strategy. Some people are better at just distracting a player and making them forget what they just heard about. So,
And there is some strategy to like what information you reveal in the questions that you ask, basically. Every question you ask is giving just as much information to everyone else, basically. So if you know someone's likely to have a 7, you might not want to reveal that.
right. And as might imagine, that this is a really fast game. Like it's not deep. It comes in a really small box, and funny enough, this is the poker sized box of Nana that I'm holding up. The box is like twice as big or 3 times as big.
Trio is
Trio
huge.
box. So bit of a joke.
Yeah.
They're selling you empty air, but the core mechanism is the same. Art is different, but the core game is the same, and seems to be popular enough. This title, this game, I think, was up for the Palme d'Or in France, or at least I heard Kaya Miyano talking about going to France to receive an award for that. So, before I wrap up my segment talking about Nana, I should mention that I heard about this game before I heard about Trio. I heard about it discussed on the podcast called Board Game Cafe Sayo After Talk. And this is a Japanese language podcast, so unless you're like me and also speak Japanese, it might not be of interest to you. But basically, the format's really interesting. It's about a game cafe, and they just record a podcast every week after they shut the door on the podcast. So whoever wants to stay around from the game session stays, the owner of the shop stays, and this just happens to be designer Kaya Miyano's friendly local game store. So he's one of the featured personalities on that show. So I heard about it there first, found that it's available as Trio in North America, and just had to pick up a copy of it when I went, and I'm very pleased that I did. What did you think of the times that we played with our various game groups?
Yeah, I mean, I lost pretty horrendously both times that I played. It is a game where you can feel like you just never get a chance to reveal any new information. Like you might have an inkling where something is, but by the time the table's gone around, like anything you were hoping for is already gone, essentially. And other people might have 2 sets before you've even had a chance to find anything from your hand. So it can feel a little unfair sometimes, and whether that's in luck or in your sense of memory, but it is a pretty low stakes game at the end of the day. It's just funny when someone makes simple memory mistakes, as long as you don't take it too seriously, obviously.
Yeah, this is a fairly light game, like the last game we covered, Harvest, and it's maybe even simpler than another card game like Sea Salt and Paper, which we covered a few months ago.
So just bought a new expansion for.
Yeah, but it's light. It's a social game. You could play this with gamers or non-gamers, and you can just kind of shoot the breeze and enjoy drinks while or snacks of all kinds while playing this. It's not very deep. It's just fun and good for a laugh. And the artwork from the Japanese version is just adorable. So I really like it, and I'm glad I picked it up. So
yeah, I definitely prefer the Japanese edition with that. This is very charming art compared to that weird sort of Art Deco graphic design of Trio, I seem to recall.
It's I think it's like Mexican paper
Oh, is that? I'm thinking of
cut
something
art
else. Yeah, okay.
for Trio, if I'm not mistaken. Not sure what that name relates to Mexican art culture, but in Japanese, the publisher is Mob Plus, and this says it's for 2 to 5 people. But so then maybe they made some light tweaks in. I would think it would be very hard to play this with 2 players because it'll go pretty one-sided, I would think.
It could be a really tight duel at 2. I don't know.
We'll see. All right, so that's Nana. How about your game, Daniel?
Yeah, well, quite fortunately, my cat Ted here, who has been hassling me all evening, has joined us just in time to give his best Jones impression, because I am talking about a little game called Alien Isolation. So, I mean, we were just talking about like the value in covering games that we've played before and revisiting and in with a new light. This is a game I have played before, close to release, and if you've listened to our top 100 games episode, I think I had this at like number 6 of my favorite video games. It's pretty high up there. So Obviously, I was talking about Alien Earth recently, which got me immediately thinking, hey, I should replay Alien Isolation. So really been enjoying revisiting that. I did stream it a couple of years ago when I briefly went through a streaming phase. I only got a couple of hours into it, I believe. So just quickly, this is developed by Creative Assembly, who you may know from the Total War game, so a bit of a flex there. Published by Sega, directed by Alastair Hope, and it was released on the 7th of October 2014. It has been released on pretty much every other platform since then, including Switch in 2019 and iOS Android in 2021. So, Mark, I believe you've poked a little bit at this game.
Yeah, this is one of those games that I've owned for a long time, and I've been desperately meaning to play because I, like you, really enjoy the Alien franchise. One and two of the movies, anyway. The others are okay. And this one definitely captures the vibes. I just played it for the first time last night. I played probably around the first couple of hours. It is a bit of a slow burn to build up. It's very atmospheric. I knew that this was a first-person game, but I didn't really know much beyond that, other than it's creepy. You kind of do a lot of like hiding and stuff like that, and I didn't realize how much of the what's it called, immersive sim that this game is. I've been playing for a long time, but I don't even have a real weapon, like I don't have one of those cool colonial marines guns or grenades or anything like that. I just have some flares and then some tools.
Well, this is very much inspired by Alien rather than Aliens. We've had multiple games that have lent more towards the latter. Obviously, Aliens Colonial Marines, I think, which is a widely panned game. You've got Aliens Dark Descent, which I have talked about here and quite enjoyed, but very different style of game. Yes, yeah, like a squad, XCOM style, but real-time strategy game, yeah. And this is one of few games that have lent more towards the original film Alien, which I did rewatch last night because I was feeling the vibes. So, yeah, I mean, that film, the alien, does not show up until like an hour into the 2-hour film, and I think I saw is on screen a total of 4 minutes, over 2 hours. So its presence is felt over the course of that entire film, and much like this game, even when you're not looking at the xenomorph, you're feeling that presence looming over the entire game, that sort of oppressive atmosphere. So yeah, I played this close to launch, and it was must be one of the first horror games I got into. I am relatively new to horror, and I mean, to be honest, I don't know how I brought myself to play this, because this sort of game where you have an unbeatable foe stalking you constantly is exactly the kind of game I struggled with. Like around the time Amnesia and Slender Man and those sort of streaming games were huge. They were just there to like provide a series of jump scares, basically, and things to react to on Twitch streams or whatever. And this game seems very much inspired by that oeuvre there. And I think I seem to recall when I was playing this, I would have been living in a share house, so surrounded by friends in a brightly lit room playing on the TV. That was the only reason I was able to bring myself to play this. So it's been surprisingly different coming back to this, playing on the computer with headphones on, and it's a much more immersive experience, funnily enough.
Yeah, I played this for the first time last night. I started in bed, of all places, with the Lenovo Legion Go. High res. It's like a 2K essentially screen, but it's like 2 inches from my face. So fairly immersive, in the dark bedroom, also with headphones on. And it is quite affecting. This is how old? It's like a 10-year-old game, right?
2014 it came out, yeah.
Right, so just about 10 years old. And it still looks really sharp. Maybe it's the, like you said, alien-inspired environments. They're very kind of anesthetic. They're very, not anesthetic. They're very like antiseptic. Is that no, not antiseptic? Antiseptic. They're
Clinical?
they're very kind of severe. Kind of almost brutalist, like mid-century design. The environments, they're very stark. a lot of white walls and a lot of metal grating. So sort of perfect for that generation of 3D graphics. Just to the point of getting like verisimilitude. Actually, the characters look terrible. The character models look terrible, but
I'll give you that.
everything
Yeah.
else looks fantastic.
Yeah, this is a really strong case in that, hey, fidelity ain't everything. The graphics in this game look fine broadly, but it's not so much about the graphics, it's about the artistic direction. The aesthetics come across really strongly here, have dated really well, just in the lighting, especially. I mean, so much of what you will enjoy this game is basically cribbed straight from the film. It is heavily indebted to that film, but you've got the soft light panels everywhere. You've got the like lights filtering through vents and fans constantly, creating these like silhouettes in these dark spaces. You've got the film grain, like from literally the moment you load up the game, the bumpers from like 20th Century Fox and Sega all have like a CRT filter over it, basically.
Yeah, and that's the beauty about this aesthetic and this art design. From the very first movie, you have these, ancient ass computers, which surely felt cutting edge at that time, but seem really, really quaint now. Like I think people are familiar with what that looks like. It's like the green screens, very much like Fallout 3 or something like that. But what's really, really effective is the tiny, tiny display screens with the scan lines of scenery at a distance. So, for instance, without giving too much of the story away, the protagonist is approaching a space station. And of course, you cut to the outside of the ship, and it looks really stark and impressive in the distance, sort of floating like a mysterious kind of glacier out in space. And then the characters that are in the meeting, who are just on approach of the system, they put it up on their tiny little screen, and it's super close and super blurry, and you can hardly make up any details, and it just like makes you feel like you're in 1981 or whatever watching this
Characters
film.
are always able to pull perfect information from these tiny pixelated screens. They don't seem to feel those restrictions at all.
Yeah, and it just makes you feel like you're on the ship with them. So definitely they've nailed the aesthetics of this. One thing I didn't appreciate, and mind you, I've only played the first 2 hours so this might change later on, but there's not a lot of great diversity in the cast. Basically, it seems like the writers have only thought to include, European sounding names, white looking cast members. Even the original Alien had a black actor on it. Like, try and diversify it a little bit. Apparently, there's no Asians or South Asians in space. It's a little disappointing. Maybe broaden it out a bit. We've kind of gone beyond 1979 here, so I wish they had expanded that a little bit. But
That doesn't change
aesthetics,
a lot, I will say. Yeah, so it is a very small cast, and that's probably one of my downsides is that you don't really get much of a chance to get to know these people. It's playing very much like a BioShock game where there's constant contrivances to keep you away from everyone else. You're always coming across characters on the other side of a glass panel or talking over the intercom, and like you're never actually working alongside other characters. There's not much in terms of NPCs you're allying with, except for like one very early noticeable exception. But the human NPCs are pretty unresponsive broadly. Like you'll come across some survivors who will shoot you on sight and some others who just cower and you can't really interact with them. It's very much BioShock in that you're coming across this space after some catastrophe has already occurred and the few remaining people are all completely on edge, and it's almost like this archaeological exercise in piecing together what has happened in this space station.
yeah, I think the BioShock comparison is really on point there. And unlike a lot of the Alien films, well, actually, maybe a lot like some of the Alien films, like some of your opponents early on in this game are humans. And you are like Ripley. You're not a colonial marine, right? You're not a soldier. You're a laborer, essentially, as the protagonist. So that's also gives you a different perspective. You're also a woman. Not saying that there's a lot of gender disparity in that world. It seems, at least on the outset. But you are meant to feel vulnerable,
Yeah,
in this environment. You know, you spend a lot of time hiding in lockers, for instance.
that's the game. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how they want to disempower you, so that you feel that fear and that you have to hide and slink in these vents, and you do that not because you're a Batman and being sneaky. It's because you're very vulnerable.
I mean, that's in the name of the game, alien isolation, right? You are alone, and that is the game. That's what we're here for. But it can sometimes feel contrived also in how the game goes about making sure you are always isolated. But I mean, I guess I should say, like, it's not really a spoiler. It's introduced from like the first opening cutscene. You are playing Amanda Ripley, Ellen's daughter, who I believe is mentioned in Aliens as having like died of old age in the sort of the 60 intervening years. So this is happening sort of halfway in between Alien and Aliens. They've found the black box recorder basically from the Nostromo, and Amanda is going to retrieve that. I will say I don't feel that Amanda is given a lot of characterization. She's mostly there as a sort of first person cipher to an extent, just to immerse you in that. I mean, it is cool that she is a final girl like Ellen basically, and very much a grunt, a worker, bringing that sort of working class mentality to the game. So where I wanted to take this quickly, so we talked about artistic direction. I just wanted to double back on that quickly to talk about the music, because this, I mean, obviously it's also very much emulating the music from the original film, and both in those sort of haunted flutes from the Jerry Goldsmith soundtrack in the original film, but also in the use of silence. There'll be a lot of time in this game where there's no noise at all, and all you can hear is all the little bleeps and bloops. I mean, I've spoken many times. I always appreciate good bleeps and bloops in the game. Great sound design and all of the machinery and whirring and whizzing. And like sometimes some of the doors will hiss as they open or close, or create this sound effects that will like give you a jump scare in terms of like sounding like the alien. There's some, I mean, the xenomorph being sort of biomechanical. There are some analogs between it and some of the machinery around the ship that can catch you up sometimes. The big one is probably the motion tracker, which is a key mechanic in this game. And I don't know, you probably haven't even encountered this yet, but like you can bring it up at any time to check your motion tracker. But even if you're not looking at it, it'll beep when anything comes within range. And just that constant jump scare is like you're constantly on edge listening for that beat, basically.
Yeah, well, I know it well from the second Alien movie, of course, Aliens. And I feel like that was a trope in movies of that, sci-fi movies of the 80s. Maybe it was inspired by Aliens, who sort of made it famous. But I can still hear that sound effect echoing in the halls of the whatever ship it was or station that Aliens was set in.
That is one thing they've pulled more from Aliens, is that motion tracker. And as someone pointed out on Bluesky earlier, like, why do they even have motion trackers other than like, trying to find where the cat has hidden on the ship? I don't know what the point of that is in the fiction of this setting.
It's a Jonesy finder.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. So, I mean, I guess what we should really talk about here is the elephant in the room, the big guy himself, and how that interacts. You've probably not encountered him yet, though, right?
No, I reached just the part where they first give a hint that there's a non-human presence. And this is where the dichotomy of my short experience lies, is as my character, I shouldn't know anything about the alien, right? So I shouldn't really be skulking around, hiding from people when I just arrived at the station. I should be like running and yelling at the top of my lungs, "Hey, someone help me." But of course, I don't play that way, because at the back of my mind, I know that there's something lurking.
We're all cursed with foreknowledge here. It's interesting because we watch, like, slight spoiler, but there is a scene that very closely emulates the opening scene in the film, or at least the scene where they go down to the planet, basically, and find the eggs. And it all plays out quite similarly, as you can imagine. And it feels, there's this sort of doomed inevitability of how it's all going to go down. I mean, we as viewers say, hey, don't stick your face in the egg. But of course, these people aren't genre savvy. They don't know that what's going to happen, basically. So it's, I mean, you've all seen people complaining about Prometheus and all the stupid scientists making very silly decisions there, but they don't know that they're in a horror movie, right?
That's true.
So you, of course, you do at some point encounter the xenomorph in this game. There are, curiously, a few notable tweaks. This is basically 10 foot tall instead of, I think, 6 or 7 feet in the original film. So they have scaled up the xenomorph to look much more imposing, obviously from the first person perspective. They've changed the sort of the legs to make it look more alien, but rather than just a person in a costume, obviously. So there's some really cool things there. But just the graphics too of how he like drops out of the vent and you see the tail curling, like you're hiding under a table and you just see the tail drop down and curl around the floor. Really expressive animations. It's worth noting that like the key premise of this game is that the alien isn't a scripted enemy. He is basically tethered to you like one of those child safety harnesses with like, you know, the sort of the soft fabric spring to sort of keep your toddler from running away. And he's constantly close to you and stalking you. And he'll sometimes run away and explore some other part of the complex, but he's always sort of bouncing back and very dynamically and responsive. I mean, that's a real problem with horror games is if you're dying a lot, you're going to be seeing the same moments over and over again. You're going to start seeing the code in the matrix. You're going to start reading the cause and effect of these enemies, and then suddenly it's not scary anymore. This xenomorph is absolutely scripted to not be predictable, really, at all. It's going to be like it's running on an AI of exploring and all these loops that it will do to try and find you, and that will evolve over the course of the game. If you keep hiding in cabinets, it unlocks these sort of gateways that it will start looking in cabinets more, or it will start looking under desks, and so it will. You have to constantly be shifting your tactics in trying to hide from it.
Yeah, I will probably keep playing this because it's spooky season, and I want to see more.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not just the xenomorph you are contending with. There are there are the humans that aren't particularly interesting. You can play them against each other, but you can like throw a noise-making machine at the humans and that'll attract the alien. And hey, he's distracted while he's feasting on these other guys while you run out the back door. But most notably, there is another enemy called the Working Joe, which is obviously a spin on the androids in this universe. But these are Silksong androids who are definitely not winning the tech race. They look incredibly uncanny by design, in both in and out of the fiction, that they have these folds of very fake artificial skin and these glowing eyes, and you know it's an android, but they just have this calm, very polite hostility to them. It's like you're being hysterical as like they're slamming your head against the wall, basically. So incredibly scary, especially if they're just slowly walking towards you. And I mean, they can be countered, but it makes it incredibly difficult. You can't shoot them or make a noise because then it's going to attract the other threats in this game. So you're constantly balancing the multiple different versions of threats and how to counter those. You do have a lot of tools in your kit. Like you are crafting a bunch of improvised weapons, both like grenades and bombs and noisemakers, flares, that sort of thing. And there are some actual guns, not particularly useful. I mean, and I love the sense of scrapping. Like you're constantly scrounging for spare parts and putting things together, which is like very reminiscent of something like Resident Evil. I love those mechanics. The one issue here is I don't really use most of these devices because even like throwing a grenade is just going to create a lot more noise and chaos than I can anticipate, really. I'm this playthrough at least, I'm very much leaning into the cat and mouse of just like keeping my hiding behind the desk and just keeping my eye on him or keeping my ear on him. Like when there's no sound or no music, you can just tell by the sound design in your headphones where everything is largely, and just go by your senses rather than using a bunch of devices. Like I think the noisemaker I use a bit, and the flamethrower, which slight spoiler there, you get a flamethrower. Alien doesn't like fire; it's an animal, as they say. Those are the two that I really use. The others I haven't been particularly useful, but it is still fun scrounging up, and it's part of the aesthetic design of it all.
Yeah, plus you don't want to shoot the alien with bullets because it's got acid skin.
That is
Acid
something
blood.
that they tried to incorporate into the game, but just in terms of like the physics of it all didn't really work, so that's not really a concern here. the more like the bullets will not stop it, essentially.
Right. Plus, that's really should be a fear more for soldiers, like a la Aliens, as opposed to you, who's more hiding and evading.
Yeah. Yeah. One final sort of mechanic I want to talk about is how great some of the other sort of immersive sim elements in this game are. In that, I mean, it's a bit of almost like a Metroidvania, and you're coming across doors locked in various ways, both mechanical and electronic, with requiring various devices, torches, hacking tools, key cards, all these sort of devices you can use to unlock them as you find over the course of the game. And they all require a different mini game to unlock. There's these giant metal braces that you've got to hold down the right trigger and press the S button and then hammer the E button, or you've got to hold down both mouse buttons and rotate it in such a way. Like, all of these inputs require like multiple button presses at once, and that's why I will advocate for playing this game on the keyboard. Like, it feels much more tactile than I recall on the controller on the console, and like pressing those buttons, you really do feel like you're hacking devices and things. It's some great tactility, but of course, like, these things take, like, even if it's 5 seconds, you're staring at this this brace, trying to unlock it and maneuver your hand, and then of course you hear the motion sensor beep. Like, you're never safe in this game. Everything takes time and is like agonizingly slow while the xenomorph is stalking around you, so it really does like ratchet up the tension.
I'm reminded of, I don't know which movie it was. I think it was in Aliens, where Ripley is trying to go up or down an elevator, and she's like pressing the button. No, actually, it might have been in Romulus, where she's pressing the button and it goes slam, 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 slam. And you just feel the tension because obviously there's nothing you can do to speed it up. But every single second of this transaction means that the deadly creature is getting closer on you, just like it perfectly sets you in the film.
Yeah. Like, this game has a great sense of tension, obviously, but it comes in waves, because the way the alien sort of is tethered to you, it will release on occasion. So you have these short-term waves that you'll suddenly decide to jump into the vents and run away. Okay, I've got like a good half a minute before he's going to come back. But then there's the long-term waves as well, where you'll have a mission or two where there is no alien, or you don't think there's an alien. You're never entirely sure. And it does play with that uncertainty in some fun ways, but it's, like I said, even when you're not seeing the alien, its presence is always there, and it's just, this whole game is just permeated by that tension in some really clever ways. I love exploring this space. It doesn't feel as interconnected as I'd like. You do, like, it is largely not quite an open world, but you can like travel back and forth between all the locations. There's not always a good reason to do so, and like, other than for collectibles. And speaking of collectibles, like, there are a bunch of monitors with like text logs and audio logs, basically, but the game never pauses when you're looking at those. And I obviously, it is a design decision. I'd rather just have it pause the game and let me like absorb that flavor, because I'm as much interested in the setting and the world building here as in the tension and the alien.
I love that era of audio logs. Audio logs are such a great tool for injecting, optional story building and optional kind of scenes that just flesh out the world a little bit more. I feel like that era 10 years ago was just ideal at that. And I sort of feel like we've moved on from it. You have a lot of these kind of like characters back yammering at you again, sort of like it's Metal Gear Solid again. But now it's, with the re-release of Snake Eater and things like that, it's like people are just yammering at you over the open channel.
Everyone's constantly got their cell phone talking to you on the radio. Yeah.
Yeah, I much prefer the discreet sort of stardom and the just play entries of the audio logs.
And they actually did get some of the original cast from the original Alien film to record some of those audio logs well. So those are worth tracking down if you can. So yeah, I mean, I mostly have just said how much I love this game. It is a really unique experience and just really masterclass in tension and atmosphere. I don't really jive with other horror games still. Like, I mean, Resident Evil I've played, but some of those games are just out there to scare you and surprise you and don't have a set. Like, I need that horror to be grounded in some sense of reality and some reason why I'm there and some sense of stakes. For me personally, like, still being relatively new to horror broadly, I'm all about this atmosphere rather than the scares themselves. And this is the exception that proves the rule for me. As I said, this is like one of my favorite games of all time. It has dated remarkably well. It still plays really well today. Don't play it on mobile phone though. I cannot imagine that. Go play it on a PC if you can.
Yeah, I can't imagine being the opposite of immersion as trying to play Alien Isolation on a mobile device. So 2 points. I understand that the some of the DLC is pretty exciting for this game.
Yeah, I've not had a chance to dig into that yet. I just repurchased the game basically, including all the DLC. Some of that does include playing through scenes from the original film. Just a couple of them. There are some others that like flesh out side characters from the game, but I believe those are more like challenge scenarios more than like narrative scenes, basically. So I'm not sure if I'll get to those. But the crew expendable alien missions, I'll definitely be playing.
Yeah, and the second point there is that I also am not really into horror games. Horror games certainly, because I don't really watch as many horror movies as you do, and some others do. Some of our guests, for instance, in the past. But I really did enjoy the series. I think it was called Until Dawn, which is on Sony PlayStation, and the premise there was that you were playing essentially the cast of a slasher film, but you sort of embodied the individuals. You saw the different sides of the storytelling, and of course, they all die. So, that's sort of part of the story, and that I was able to latch onto that because it was a bit more of like a visual, not really a visual novel, but
there is some action, but largely it's narrative focused. You're making decisions.
More an adventure game, you know. So that's an easy entry into that genre.
Cool.
All right, shall we talk about some dessert?
Yeah, well, I'm going to pivot very quickly and talk about mine because partly it's connected to this book I've been reading. It's called Perfect Organism. It's basically a companion to Alien Isolation. I've been reading along with that as I replay the game, by Andy Kelly. It has some chapters on like the making of the game and some not necessarily interviews, but digging into some of the design decisions behind it. And then it has like a play-by-play mission guide essentially. And it's not particularly it's not adding anything new. Essentially, like if you're like me and already being very observant, like it's not going to be giving you much new information other than some insight into like this watch was obviously inspired by this Casio model. This radio was obviously inspired by this model. There was a note about one of the inspirations for the original film was an album by a Japanese composer called Isao Tomita called The Planets. So as you can imagine, that is basically a remake of, or a remix of Holst's orchestral suite, The Planets. One of my personal favorites. I really do like that piece. But I have listened to this a couple of times. It's not going to be an in-depth review. I don't have the language for reviewing music. But I gave it a couple of listens, and it's a really good take. I mean, it uses the planets as a base, but then provides some sort of synthesized filters over the top, but then also a lot of other electronic devices, a lot of good bleeps and bloops. Really, like, haunted, ethereal, ominous tone to some of these pieces, and it was just really good to vibe to. I've been listening to a lot of sort of space music, I guess is the genre of these ethereal soundscapes, and I really enjoyed that little remix. So yeah, not an in-depth review, but I'd recommend checking out The Planets by Isao Tomita.
Very nice. Holst's The Planets. Jupiter, man, that is a that is a hot track right there. All right, I'm gonna cover my my dessert. It's also music related. Well, it's a musical. So I mentioned this because I watched this filmed musical last night with my youngest kid. We watched Frozen, the musical. And I think I've maybe hinted at the fact that I was a theater kid back in my youth, and I am an enjoyer of musicals, of Broadway musicals. So this was the filmed recording of the London, actually. I think the London performance of Frozen, the Disney property, turned into a stage show, essentially. So it's the entire musical, and it's filmed on stage, but they do some cool things as well. Like they go like they do like 360 around the actors on the stage.
Oh,
Like you get to see some stuff that is not necessarily exactly what the people in the audience would see. But, there's no CG aside from the practical effects and the projection mapping and things like that are in the stage show. And, I wanted to share this with my kid who loves to sing, and obviously is just the right age to enjoy Frozen in their youth. Maybe not so much recently, but I wanted to introduce it to them again. And, I was the right age to enjoy Disney musicals of sort of the golden era in the 1990s, for instance, like
mm.
Little Mermaid,
Beauty and the Beast was a
Beauty and the
favorite of mine.
Beast. Yeah, exactly. These are beautiful
Hmm.
classics, and Frozen is really up there as well. It tells a fairly interesting story, and I wanted to point out that the stage show really delves deeper into a lot of the relationships that are in this film, and makes some interesting and different choices, and maybe like sort of delves deeper into some other facts as well. For instance, they show a lot more of the young days of Elsa and Anna.
Mm.
So,
Story.
there's that whole like quick, very quick intro, and then it's like boom right into, do you want to
It's like a
make
montage,
do
basically.
a snowman?
Mm.
Yeah. Because I don't know, I guess they thought they wanted to convey the emotional grounding a little bit more. Like there's actually like multiple songs and long sequences of the two of them as kids,
Hmm.
and it's an opportunity to have cute, very talented kids
Child
on
actors. Yeah.
stage performing those bits, and it's really nice. Lots of practical effects, like they build the snowman, and they really emphasize some stuff like Olaf is not just some like whimsy, like he was created by the two of them, and
Hmm.
that's why he shows up later on. It's like 10 years have gone by, but it's a remnant of what they did in the past, helps to connect the two sisters together. So really, really smart. And, they do some cool practical effects as well. Like the two children make the snowman on stage with blocks and sticks,
Huh.
but it still animates like
Oh
animatronically.
well.
So a lot of like, how did they do that sort of stuff? And this continues on. They have, well, I'll continue on and talk about Olaf. Olaf comes on stage, and you might imagine, well, how would they do that? They do the Lion King sort of thing, the Lion King stage
Oh,
show.
puppet sort of things.
They
Yeah.
do puppetry,
Okay.
and it's really remarkable. Like at first, the first moment you see it, it's like, that is dumb. That is so stupid. There, I am not able to suspend my disbelief. And then about 30 seconds later, you're like, yeah, that is a animated snowman. It's really remarkable. You just have to see it. Even if you're just curious about puppetry, stagecraft, just technology, it's really, really interesting. Like both Olaf and Sven, the reindeer, have eyes that blink and animate, and they're all timed to dramatic scenes and humorous scenes. It's really quite remarkable. There's whole sequences where Anna and what's his face, the mountain man, are climbing over the mountains, and they have this like ridiculous, like Titanic sized mountainside that is just gets rolled across stage, and you're like, how does that fit in the theater? Like, how are they doing this? And then don't get me started, Elsa, her scene where she basically kind of, obviously it's let it go. She becomes herself. She becomes the Ice Queen. It's remarkable. They have projection mapped graphics over top of physical set pieces that they lower from the proscenium, and it's just incredible. And she does this like instant costume change, which happens in a
Nice.
flash, just perfectly timed to the music. So if just like if anyone, some of the audience might be poo-pooing my obvious audible excitement at watching this, like, very commercial, Disneyfied property. This is a corporation. This isn't like Broadway magic.
Give yourself to the
But
spectacle of Olaf.
but you know what? Disney, They have enough money. They can afford the best. The best in the business. These performers are great.
It's
These
no
little
Disney
kids,
on Ice.
yeah, these little kids are great. The technical production is amazing. The costumes are amazing. Like, this is just top of the craft stuff. So I'm really pleased that nowadays many more Broadway or that level stage productions are being filmed now, because it's really expensive. It's easily a couple $100 to go to a stage show in either the Canadian dollars or a little bit less in US dollars, but it's really pricey. So if you can't get out there, or the stage show is not coming to your town, you can watch it with yourself or with your family and really get a taste of that Broadway magic. So it still affected me. I really enjoyed sharing that experience with my kid. And we watched a bunch of music videos on YouTube of other stage shows and their famous show tunes.
So you're saying if you
that.
have any hang-ups on stage shows and Disney, what do you do, Mark?
You just let that go. Let it go. Just let it go. I caught what you were doing there. Feel those seasons of love, whatever you need to do. Just wave through that window. Never mind. Stop me now. Don't stop me now. Okay, that's my dessert bit. I think we should wrap this one up.
Excellent. Let's do that. Okay, well, thank you for listening to our 3 course of games for today. If you have any thoughts or questions or comments, you can contact us at omnigamersclub@gmail.com or at our website, omnigamers.club.
That's right. And you can check out our episodes that we put out on YouTube as well. If you haven't seen us there, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You could see video footage of the game systems that I showed up on screen earlier in my retro handhelds discussion. Exactly, we had like a moment where both of our cats were on top of both of us simultaneously. Not transmissible by audio, obviously. More reason to watch on video form. But if you do want to catch our back catalog, you can catch the first 60 or so, 70 episodes that we did. Maybe not 70. The first bunch of episodes we did only in audio form on a podcatcher of your choosing.
Excellent. And you can find me over at Bluesky at Board Game Feast. And Omnigamers Club also has an account there as well.
That's right. I also have an account. It's MARKYUSY. I know how to spell my name. MARKYUASA at bsky.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Daniel. Enjoyable episode again. And until next time, have a balanced diet of gaming.
Thanks. Bye.